The golden sun hung low over the great city of Alexandria, casting long shadows across the streets and temples. Its light danced on the marble statues of gods and kings, reflecting the wealth and splendor of the Ptolemaic dynasty. Among the grand palaces and bustling markets, Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt, moved with grace and intelligence, her presence commanding attention wherever she went. She was not only known for her beauty, but for her sharp mind and unwavering determination to protect her people. Every decision she made carried the weight of her kingdom, yet beneath her regal exterior there was a heart capable of deep feeling and longing. In Rome, far to the west, the political world was a tempest of ambition and power struggles. Mark Antony, one of the most celebrated generals of his time, was a man of strength, charisma, and passion. He was a soldier, a leader, and a man who had faced countless battles, yet even he could not foresee how destiny would lead him to the shores of Egypt. Stories of Cleopatra's intelligence, charm, and royal beauty had reached Rome, stirring curiosity and admiration among the senators and generals alike. It was the year 41 BCE when Antony traveled to Tarsus in modern-day Turkey to summon Cleopatra to meet him. Rumors of her influence over her kingdom and her ability to sway men in power had reached his ears, and he approached this meeting with a mixture of caution and intrigue. Cleopatra, aware of the importance of this encounter, planned carefully. She understood that Antony held immense sway over Roman politics, and their meeting could determine the future of Egypt itself. Cleopatra did not arrive as a simple envoy or visitor. She arrived in a spectacle of grandeur and elegance. She was carried down the river in a barge adorned with gold and silk, her royal attendants moving like shadows behind her. The barge glided silently over the calm water, its sails painted with rich colors, shimmering in the afternoon sun. Cleopatra herself reclined on the deck, regal and serene, her dark eyes reflecting both intelligence and curiosity. Every movement was deliberate, every glance measured, designed to captivate not only Antony's eyes, but also his respect and admiration. When Antony first laid eyes on Cleopatra, he was struck. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. She was more than beautiful. She radiated a presence that demanded attention without demanding it. Cleopatra rose from her seat as he approached, greeting him with a calm confidence that was rare among rulers. The air between them seemed charged, not with immediate passion, but with mutual recognition. Two powerful figures, both aware of the forces of the world that pressed upon them, meeting as equals. Their conversation began carefully, with cautious politeness and measured words. Cleopatra spoke of her kingdom, her people, and the challenges she faced in maintaining Egypt's independence amidst Roman expansion. Antony, in turn, shared his ambitions, his battles, and his struggles to navigate the turbulent waters of Roman politics. As they spoke, an unspoken connection grew, a sense of understanding that transcended politics and power. Both recognized in the other a kindred spirit, a person who carried the weight of leadership, but still possessed the capacity for deep emotion. Days passed as Antony and Cleopatra continued to meet. They dined together in opulent halls, walked along the banks of the Nile, and spoke late into the night under starlit skies. They shared stories of their childhoods, their hopes and their fears. Cleopatra revealed her love for her people and her unwavering desire to protect Egypt's legacy. Antony shared the burdens of his responsibilities in Rome, the struggles of balancing duty with personal desire. Their conversations were filled with admiration, respect, and a quiet fascination. Slowly, their admiration grew into something more. It was not a love born of fleeting passion, but of recognition. two souls understanding the rare combination of strength and vulnerability in the other. Cleopatra found herself drawn to Antony's courage, his boldness, and the honesty he showed behind his commanding exterior. Antony, in turn, was captivated by Cleopatra's brilliance, her unwavering determination, and the grace with which she carried the weight of a kingdom on her shoulders. Yet, despite the warmth growing between them, both were painfully aware of the world beyond their private moments. Their love, if it could be called that yet, existed against a backdrop of politics, duty, and looming war. Every shared glance carried the knowledge that their bond would have consequences, both for themselves and for the empires they represented. Antony was a Roman, bound by loyalty to his people and obligations he could not ignore. Cleopatra was a queen, whose every action could shape the destiny of a nation. As the first part of their story unfolded, one truth became clear. Cleopatra and Mark Antony were destined to meet not by chance, but by the threads of fate weaving together ambition, intellect, and the unyielding pull of human hearts. Their connection was rare, a spark that promised both joy and heartbreak. Alexandria, with all its grandeur, had never witnessed a meeting like this, and the world beyond would soon feel the ripples of the bond forming between a queen and a general, a woman and a man, whose love would become legendary. The days that followed Cleopatra's arrival in Alexandria were filled with both wonder and tension. The city buzzed with anticipation, whispers of the queen's meeting with the mighty Roman general spreading through the markets and streets like wildfire. Yet behind the pomp and grandeur, a delicate balance was being tested between love, loyalty, and the burdens of leadership. Cleopatra and Antony spent long hours together, often walking along the Nile as the water reflected the golden sun. They shared more than conversations. They shared understanding, laughter, and the rare ease that comes when two people recognize kindred spirits in each other. Cleopatra admired Antony's decisiveness, the way he could command armies and yet show genuine curiosity about the world he had not conquered. Antony, in turn, was captivated by Cleopatra's intelligence and grace. She was a ruler of immense skill, capable of navigating the treacherous waters of Egyptian politics while maintaining her dignity and charm. Despite the blossoming affection between them, the shadow of politics loomed constantly. Cleopatra knew that Antony's presence in Egypt was not merely personal, it was political. His mission was to ensure that Egypt remained a strong ally to Rome, and his judgment would weigh heavily on her decisions. Antony, though captivated by Cleopatra, could not ignore the delicate balance he had to maintain with Rome's Senate and the ambitious Octavian, his political rival. Their growing closeness was both a comfort and a source of danger, for any sign of personal weakness could be exploited by enemies on either side. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep purple, Cleopatra invited Antony to the royal gardens. The air was filled with the scent of blooming jasmine and the soft sound of fountains. They walked slowly among the marble statues, speaking in quiet tones. Cleopatra spoke of her fears, the vulnerability of her kingdom, the constant threat of betrayal, and the weight of being both a ruler and a woman in a world dominated by men. Antony listened with patience and empathy, offering words of reassurance and respect. He understood that her strength did not diminish her humanity, and that her vulnerability was not a flaw but a testament to her courage. As the nights passed, their bond deepened. They shared quiet meals, discussed philosophy, and even poetry. Cleopatra introduced Antony to the wonders of Egyptian culture, from the grand temples to the secrets of the royal library. Antony, fascinated by the knowledge and history of Egypt, found himself enchanted not only by the country, but by the woman who carried its legacy with such pride. Every gesture, every shared glance strengthened the connection between them. It was a love that felt inevitable, yet impossible, for the world outside their private moments was unforgiving. The political stakes, however, could not be ignored. Reports arrived from Rome, bringing news of Octavian's growing power and Antony's position in the shifting alliances of the Roman Republic. Cleopatra understood that their personal affection would soon collide with political necessity. She knew that Antony's enemies in Rome could interpret his attachment to her as a threat, undermining his authority and endangering both their positions. Yet she could not deny the pull she felt toward him, the sense that their meeting was more than chance. It was destiny. For Antony, the situation was equally complex. His loyalty to Rome demanded caution, yet his heart increasingly belonged to Cleopatra. He found himself torn between duty and desire, political strategy and personal longing. The weight of the empire rested on his shoulders, and every decision carried consequences, not only for himself, but for the woman he had come to admire and love. Yet in Cleopatra, he saw a partner who matched him in intellect and ambition, a woman who could understand the burdens he carried and share in his vision of a world shaped by courage and wisdom. Their love, quiet yet powerful, began to inspire the people around them. The courtiers of Alexandria marveled at their union, sensing the respect and tenderness that existed between the queen and the general. Yet whispers of disapproval also circulated, voices questioning the loyalty of Antony, warning Cleopatra of the dangers of attaching her heart to a Roman, reminding them both that politics could destroy even the strongest bonds. But neither Cleopatra nor Antony could resist the connection they had found. It was a love that transcended titles and borders, built on mutual admiration, understanding, and an unspoken recognition of destiny. One night, under the silver light of the moon, Cleopatra and Antony stood on the balcony of the royal palace overlooking the Nile. The city was quiet, and the river mirrored the stars above. Antony took Cleopatra's hand, feeling the warmth of her skin, the strength in her touch. "I have seen many battles, faced countless foes, but nothing has challenged me like the thought of losing you." Cleopatra looked into his eyes, seeing both the vulnerability and determination there. "We are not just two people. We are two forces that history has brought together. But history is cruel, and we must be careful, for love is not always enough." They held each other in silence, the weight of their choices pressing down upon them, yet their hearts daring to hope. In that moment, they understood that love was not only about passion, but about courage, trust, and the willingness to stand together against the world, no matter the uncertain outcome. It was a love forged in fire and politics, a love that would endure even the harshest trials. And so, amid the grandeur of Alexandria and the looming shadows of Rome, Cleopatra and Mark Antony's bond continued to grow. Their connection was no longer just admiration, it was trust, reliance, and a profound emotional intimacy. They were partners in a world of power and danger, finding solace in each other while the winds of politics and war threatened to sweep them apart. Their love had begun, beautiful and fragile, yet stronger than either could have imagined. The warmth of Alexandria seemed to mask the storm gathering across the Mediterranean. Though Cleopatra and Mark Antony had found solace and understanding in each other's presence, the world beyond the palace walls was relentless. Rome was no longer just a distant threat. It was a force shaping every decision Antony made, and by extension, the fate of Cleopatra and Egypt. The political situation in Rome had shifted dramatically. Octavian, Antony's ambitious rival, had grown in power and influence, eager to challenge Antony's authority and sway public opinion against him. Letters and envoys carried reports of dissent and plotting, warning of betrayal and warning Antony to be cautious. Every word of admiration from Cleopatra, every glance of intimacy now carried the weight of potential scandal. Yet Antony, torn between loyalty to Rome and devotion to Cleopatra, could not deny the growing strength of his feelings. Cleopatra, for her part, understood the dangers. She was no naive queen. She had ruled with cunning and intelligence since she was young, surviving plots, rebellions, and political rivalries. Yet Antony's presence brought her joy and vulnerability in equal measure. She had opened her heart to him, and now every decision had to balance the survival of Egypt with the survival of their love. They were two powerful forces, united in spirit, yet constrained by the pressures of a world around them. The tension reached a turning point when Antony received news of imminent conflict. Rome demanded loyalty, and Octavian's influence threatened both Antony's position and Cleopatra's kingdom. The generals and senators of Rome whispered accusations, claiming Antony had become too entangled with the Egyptian queen. They feared that Cleopatra's intelligence and ambition would sway Antony away from Rome, endangering the fragile balance of power in the Mediterranean. Antony faced an impossible choice: remain in Alexandria with the woman he loved, or return to Rome to secure his political future. Cleopatra, sensing the weight of his decision, remained resolute. "Do not let them dictate your heart," she told him one evening as they walked through the palace gardens. "You are a man of courage, Antony. You have faced armies, storms, and betrayal. Do not fear the judgments of those who cannot understand the bond we share." Antony took her hands in his, feeling the warmth and strength of her touch. "You are right," he whispered, his voice filled with both longing and sorrow. "But the world we live in does not forgive weakness. We must be wise as well as brave." The lovers devised the plan to maintain both their bond and their duties. Antony would return to Rome briefly, negotiating alliances and addressing political threats, while Cleopatra would consolidate her kingdom, preparing for the uncertain future. They parted with promises of reunion, each carrying the burden of longing and the fear of what might come. Their farewell was quiet, not of anger or mistrust, but of profound understanding. Even in separation, their hearts remained intertwined. But distance could not diminish the strength of their connection. Letters and envoys traveled between Alexandria and Rome, carrying messages filled with love, admiration, and careful strategy. Cleopatra's words reminded Antony of the beauty and purpose of their bond, grounding him amidst the chaos of politics and war. Antony's letters reassured Cleopatra of his loyalty and devotion, even as he navigated the treacherous waters of Roman alliances and enmities. Their love became both a refuge and a weapon, a source of courage that allowed them to face challenges they could not confront alone. But fate, relentless as ever, would not allow their path to be easy. Rumors and betrayals grew, reaching Alexandria as whispers of Octavian's rising power and Rome's suspicion of Antony circulated. Cleopatra faced pressure from her court, some advisors warning her against placing too much trust in a Roman general. Antony, too, faced mounting criticism, accused of being under the influence of the Egyptian queen and neglecting his duties to Rome. The lovers found themselves fighting not only for their kingdoms, but for the legitimacy and survival of their love. Amid the uncertainty, they clung to each other. Nights in Alexandria were spent in quiet reflection and shared determination. Cleopatra would often gaze at the stars with Antony, feeling both the vastness of the world and the intimacy of their bond. "No matter what happens," she said softly, "we have this moment. And in these moments, we are free from the demands of the world." Antony held her close, understanding that the beauty of their love lay in its resilience, the way it endured, even when surrounded by conflict, betrayal, and danger. Soon, the inevitable came. War erupted between Antony and Octavian, and the lovers faced the full weight of history pressing upon them. Antony, leading his legions, could not remain in Alexandria, and Cleopatra, prepared to defend her kingdom, could not leave. They were forced into separate arenas of power, their love tested not by choice, but by circumstance. Every decision carried consequences. Battle plans, alliances, and strategies became entwined with the risk of losing each other forever. Yet even in the face of conflict, their hearts remained steadfast. In this crucible of war and ambition, Cleopatra and Antony's love transformed. It was no longer just admiration or affection, it became a force that sustained them through betrayal, political intrigue, and the cruelty of fate. Each knew the world might never accept their union, and yet in the quiet moments they shared, they found hope, courage, and a deep emotional intimacy. Their love, forged in the fires of power and desire, was now stronger yet more fragile than ever. As the first battles approached, they made a silent vow to face whatever came together, to protect each other even when separated, and to carry the memory of their connection into the uncertain days ahead. The stage was set for tragedy as the currents of history and ambition threatened to sweep them apart. But in Alexandria, under the moonlight, Antony and Cleopatra held fast to a single truth: love, even in the face of war and betrayal, could be a force more enduring than any empire. The Mediterranean sun rose over a world poised on the edge of destiny. The drums of war echoed across the plains as armies prepared for battle. Antony, standing among his legions, felt the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. He was no longer simply a man in love. He was a general, a protector of Egypt's queen, and a Roman bound by duty. Yet, even amid armor and strategy, his thoughts were with Cleopatra, the woman whose presence had transformed his heart and whose intellect had earned his deepest respect. In Alexandria, Cleopatra sensed the storm approaching. She moved through her palace with composed determination, preparing her people for the consequences of the coming conflict. Her advisors urged caution, some even pleading for her to distance herself from Antony, warning that the union of queen and Roman general could invite disaster. But Cleopatra's heart was steadfast. She would not abandon Antony, just as he had not abandoned her. Their love had become a bond stronger than fear, politics, or even the looming shadow of death. The fateful confrontation came at the Battle of Actium. Antony's forces clashed with Octavian's, and the sea became a theater of strategy, courage, and desperation. Antony fought valiantly, leading his men with the precision and passion that had defined his life. But the tides of fate were against him. Ships were lost, lines broken, and hope dwindled as Octavian's forces gained the upper hand. Antony's heart ached not just for the outcome of battle, but for the knowledge that Cleopatra's safety was now in jeopardy. Back in Alexandria, Cleopatra watched the smoke and turmoil from her palace balcony. Her mind raced with plans, yet there was an undercurrent of dread she could not suppress. She understood that the political tides of Rome, combined with the outcome of this battle, could shatter everything she had worked for, and the man she loved might be lost to her forever. The weight of her responsibilities and her love converged in an unbearable tension. When word came of Antony's retreat, the queen acted swiftly. She had not fled in fear. She had acted with the determination that defined her reign. Cleopatra's cunning and wisdom had always been her greatest weapons. She gathered her most trusted allies and prepared a strategy to protect her kingdom and preserve her dignity, even as Antony faced humiliation and despair. Yet, despite their careful plans, the reality of defeat was unavoidable. Antony returned to Alexandria, weary, wounded, and broken in spirit. The sight of Cleopatra filled him with both hope and despair. "We fought," he said softly, voice heavy with sorrow, "and still the world has turned against us." Cleopatra's eyes, steady and compassionate, met his. "The world may take everything else, Antony, but it cannot take what we share. We remain free in our hearts, even if history seeks to chain us." They embraced, not with fear, but with the quiet courage that comes from knowing love is stronger than the cruelty of fate. As Octavian's forces closed in, the lovers made a final, unspoken decision. They would not live under the humiliation of conquest, nor would they be separated by the ambitions of others. Antony, despairing and wounded, allowed Cleopatra to guide him toward their inevitable end. In a private chamber of the palace, surrounded by symbols of Egypt's glory and history, they shared one last moment of intimacy, not of passion, but of recognition, of the deep bond they had forged. Words were necessary. Their hearts had spoken for years, in moments both grand and subtle, in laughter, in counsel, in silent understanding. Antony, in a final act of courage and love, faced the consequences of their choices. Cleopatra, ever regal, took control of her destiny, as she had always done. Their deaths, though tragic, were also a testament to the power of their bond, a refusal to allow external forces to diminish the meaning of their love. They chose each other until the very end, proving that even in the face of overwhelming loss, love could remain triumphant in its own way, immortal, unyielding, and legendary. The people of Alexandria mourned, yet they also celebrated the courage of their queen and her Roman companion. Cleopatra's legacy endured, not just in history and legend, but in the profound story of a love that defied the boundaries of politics, war, and the limitations imposed by the world. Antony's name lived on in tales of heroism and devotion, inseparable from the queen's intelligence, heart, and bravery that had captivated him entirely. In the quiet after the storm, their story became eternal. Poets, historians, and storytellers would recount the love of Cleopatra and Mark Antony for centuries, each generation inspired by the courage, intellect, and passion that defined them. Their bond was not one of fleeting infatuation, but of a connection that transcended empires and time itself. It was a love that had faced every obstacle, embraced the highest joys, and endured the deepest sorrows. Even in death, Cleopatra and Antony remained together in legend. Their story reminds the world that love can be both a sanctuary and a source of immense courage, that two hearts united by respect and understanding can withstand the harshest trials, and that even in tragedy, there is beauty, dignity, and enduring hope.